Most of us associate long-haul flights with wide-body aircraft, and since the introduction of the 747, this has largely been the case. However, in recent years, we're beginning to see a shift. Narrow-body aircraft are becoming increasingly capable of flying long distances, and with the convenience of point-to-point routes proving popular for many airlines, long-range narrow bodies are the way forward. This is the race for small. The introduction of more capable narrow-body aircraft, including the Boeing 737 MAX, Airbus A220 and especially the Airbus A321XLR, is certainly a key factor. Combine this with today's reduced demand and an increased appetite for point-to-point routes, and we could see more airlines looking into this. In the past decades, long-haul flying has mostly been undertaken by larger, wide-body aircraft. The introduction of the 747 in 1969 really changed the possibilities and standards of flying. Direct flights were possible to many more locations. To a large extent, aircraft development over the next decades held the same concept. The 747 was followed in the long-range market by the 767 and the 777, both wide bodies. Airbus launched the dual A330 and A340 wide-body program, and in more recent years the A350 and A380, as well as the Boeing 787, have also come onto the scene. Longer flights with narrow-body aircraft, however, are nothing new. If we go back to the early days of the jet age, the Boeing 707 was the first truly successful jet aircraft and was in fact a narrow-body. The most sold passenger 707 variant, the 707-320B, could fly 140 to 189 passengers as far as 9,300 kilometers. With the development of the 747 and later wide bodies, these early days of long narrow-body flight were largely forgotten, but it has never completely gone away. While you wouldn't find an early Boeing 737 on long-haul routes, many narrow-body aircraft have been capable of decent ranges. The 737NG, 757 and A320ceo are all capable of flight times of up to 8 hours. The 757-200, for example, has a range of up to 7,250 kilometers, while the 737-800, the most sold 737 variant to date, comes in at 5,436 kilometers, and this has developed even further with the A320neo and the 737 MAX series. One of the first modern narrow bodies to start being used extensively for long-haul flights was the Boeing 757. The first flew in 1983 and has been very popular with US airlines for medium and long-haul domestic and regional flights. Once ETOPS rules extended twin-engine operations later in the decade, it started to see use on longer routes, including transatlantic.
ETOPS was really a game changer for twin-engine aircraft. The acronym, if you didn't know, it stands for Extended Range Twin-Engine Operational Performance Standards. Obviously, ETOPS is a lot easier to say. But it was first granted for TWA for their Boeing 767 back in the 80s. And it was kind of a special allocation which gave them the ability to fly up to 120 minutes from the nearest airport suitable for emergency landings. Now, what this meant for TWA was that they could fly to Paris from the States without having to make lots of stops along the way. So, it really opened up the possibility to fly transatlantic with their twin jet. Before this, it was only 60 minutes. At one point, it was 90 minutes. But with the latest generation of narrowbody, it's now become possible to fly these small planes over large bodies of water too. For example, the A321neo, the long-range version, has ETOPS 180. The 737 MAX also has ETOPS 180. And it's possible the XLR will have an even greater ETOPS than this. So, this means airlines can launch long and skinny routes connecting continents with these smaller aircraft over large bodies of water.
We looked in detail at some of the longest 737 flights operating in 2018. Lufthansa's 737-700 flight from Frankfurt to Pune, India, was the longest, with a flight time of 8 hours and 20 minutes. Aerolíneas Argentinas was operating a MAX 8 for 8 hours between Buenos Aires and Punta Cana. Of course, this is no longer the case. The rise in narrow-body routes seen in 2018 has only increased further these days, with several drivers, including the availability of new aircraft with increased range, such as the A321LR and in the coming years the A321XLR, the 737 MAX returning to service, a number of huge improvements in narrow-body efficiency, a shift to more point-to-point flight operations, and a lower demand on many routes as aviation recovers over the coming years.
If you're liking this video so far, why not click subscribe and hit the like button? Oh, and be sure to click that notification bell too.
While the rise of narrow-body routes in the past was due largely to the 757, today there are 3 new aircraft pushing the possibilities of narrow-bodies. For now, these are the Boeing 737 MAX, the Airbus A220, and the A321LR, which has been further developed into the A321XLR. Let's look at each jet in further detail. The 737 MAX, of course, has had its problems in the last 2 years. However, this should change with its recertification and the recovery of air travel in the coming years. The 737, of course, has improved throughout its long history with several series of aircraft. The 737 MAX has continued these improvements. In fact, there's a 14% improvement in efficiency between the next generation and the 737 MAX series. The MAX's range has also increased across all variants, making it much more suitable for longer routes. The MAX variants offer the following ranges: 737 MAX 7, 7,130 kilometers; 737 MAX 8, 6,570 kilometers; 737 MAX 9, 6,570 kilometers; and the 737 MAX 10, 6,110 kilometers. For comparison, the most popular 737NG variant, the 737-800, has a range of 5,436 kilometers. Before its grounding, we saw the 737 MAX on some long routes. Norwegian Air operated some of the longest 737 MAX routes, including flights to New York from Belfast, Dublin, Edinburgh, and Shannon. These are all over 5,000 kilometers. Meanwhile, Aerolíneas Argentinas operated the 737 MAX between Buenos Aires and Punta Cana, a route of almost 6,000 kilometers. With a range of just over 6,200 kilometers, the A220-300 comes just short of the 737 MAX. But with its lower capacity and incredible efficiency, the jet opens up more markets and routes to long-haul narrow-bodies. We've not yet seen this on routes as long as those operated by the 737 MAX or on transatlantic services just yet. US airlines have used it mainly on regional routes, although Delta has operated it between Atlanta and Seattle. European carrier Air Baltic has operated it on several longer routes, including Riga to Abu Dhabi, a distance of 4,370 kilometers. In articles found on our website, Simple Flying has looked at the possibility of longer transatlantic routes with the A220. The jet has received ETOPS 180 approval. An extended range version could easily fly between London and New York or further. The biggest game changer in long-haul narrow-body flight is likely to be the Airbus A321XLR. This new aircraft is currently expected to enter service by 2023, with production expected to begin in June 2021. This aircraft indeed promises a lot. It extends range up to 8,700 kilometers and offers a 30% lower fuel burn per seat compared with previous generation A320neos. The plane can seat between 175 to 244 passengers, depending on the configuration. We'll have to wait some time to see where airlines will fly their A321XLRs, but with over 450 of these aircraft ordered by more than 20 airlines, we're bound to see some interesting services. The largest orders of the A321XLR have been from US airlines, namely American Airlines and United Airlines, each ordering 50. We also have sizable orders from airlines like Qantas, AirAsia, Vietjet, Wizz Air, and Air Arabia. There are huge route possibilities for the A321XLR. It can, of course, easily operate transatlantic flights, but it can go much further. It can connect South Asia with Europe, the Middle East with South Africa, or the southern US with South American destinations like Argentina and Chile. Some long-distance route examples might be Abu Dhabi to Reykjavik, Brisbane to Hanoi, Houston to Santiago, Kuala Lumpur to Auckland. Low-cost airlines in particular have many opportunities to expand routes. JetBlue will soon launch service to European markets. Vietnamese low-cost airline Vietjet is planning to operate Australia services, and Chile's Sky Airline is eyeing connections into North America. Of course, it's not just improving aircraft and engine technology that'll lead to more narrow-body long-haul routes. Airline economics and operation have shifted in recent years too, and the slowdown experienced in 2020 and beyond will increase this. Airlines are increasingly moving to point-to-point operations. The case of the A380 is a good example of this. This was envisioned by Airbus as a high-capacity aircraft to meet and beat the Boeing 747. It would be ideal for hub-and-spoke operations where passengers are brought together from several destinations to fly high-capacity routes from hub airports. It would also help at busy capacity-constrained airports by maximizing slot usage. This has not really worked out for the A380. Airlines have shifted more to point-to-point, and with this, smaller aircraft have taken over. Emirates may have made it work well, but others have struggled. With wide bodies, the smaller 777 has overtaken the 747 as the most sold to date, and this will go further with the 777X. Airbus has ended the A380 program and is focused on the twin-engine A350. The situation is going further with a need for lower capacity on many routes. Coming out of the pandemic, airlines are likely to see lower demand on many routes. We're seeing this downscaling with long-haul airlines like Emirates as it moves from the A380 to smaller aircraft like the 787 and A350. If the demand is lower, it'll make even more sense to operate lower-cost narrow bodies on routes that can take them. Airlines are also more likely to start testing new routes as demand and passenger profiles change. Leisure travel will likely come back much faster than business travel in many markets, for example. This too will benefit from a lower capacity, cheaper to operate narrow body, at least until the route is proven ready for a wide body. Point-to-point is also likely to become even more appealing as passengers look to avoid hub airport connections. The convenience of smaller planes on point-to-point routes is huge.
So point-to-point has really been a step change away from the hub and spoke of the 1990s. And for passengers, there's plenty of benefits. As you know, I'm sure you can understand, it's shorter journeys, there's a lot less hassle, there's no stress of connecting in foreign airports or whether you're going to make that connection, far fewer risks of your bags going missing. But as well as the passengers, there are benefits for airlines too. It allows them to target routes that have little or no competition. It means they can increase the markets that they're flying, and it means that most importantly, they're not limited to these congested hub airports, so they've got room to grow and expand.
Of course, one of the challenges of operating narrow bodies on longer flights is the smaller cabin space. Passengers are used to the higher ceilings, extra space, and additional lavatories afforded by a wide-body aircraft. This may be hard to replicate on narrow bodies. Some passengers, of course, will accept this, especially if the growing use of efficient narrow bodies also lowers ticket price and increases the choice of routes. The flying experience may not even be all that bad. Even with long-haul flying, not all passengers are enjoying spacious suites and onboard bars.
So for most of us, the image of the narrow body is being packed in, no room to move, you know, your typical Ryanair flight where you've got no leg room and people squashed either side of you. But this is changing rapidly with the rise in longer flights on small planes. And particularly up front, it's not unusual to see a lie-flat bed on a narrow body. I mean, JetBlue pioneered this with the Mint product in the US, and other US airlines use premium products, particularly on the longer transcon flights as well. Even down the back, airlines have a mind to our comfort. Modern narrow bodies typically have wider seats than the economy class of a historic wide body plane, and you'll have more legroom too. So they know that it doesn't sound great going a long way on a narrow body, but they're trying to make it as pleasant as possible.
In the past, we've seen aircraft fitted out with an all-business class setup. Le Compagnie did this with the 757 and A321neo, while British Airways used the A318 between London City and New York. We could well see something similar, most likely with the smaller A220, but there's nothing lined up yet. However, as narrow-body routes expand, it would not be surprising to see this develop. What do you think are the possibilities for long-haul narrow-body routes in the future? Where else do you think we'll see the 737 MAX, A220, A321LR and A321XLR expand to? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Did you know that we publish over 175 stories every single week on simpleflying.com? Be sure to check the link in the description for more great stories just like this. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe before you go.